Вітаю, мене звати Аня, я є речницею навчально-тренувального центру Тернополя. І сьогодні спілкуюся з гостем, звати Кольт. Кольт приїхав до нас зі Сполучених Штатів. Кольт, розкажіть про себе, хто ви є і чому ви приїхали в Україну.
My name's Colt. I'm 28. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. The initial reason I came to Ukraine is honestly that the Russians pissed me off. I saw the news February 24th of 2022, and I got really angry. I decided that I wanted to do something. I wanted to go fix the problem at its source. Anybody can send a check in the mail, and we need that. That probably does more good than anything. Anybody can hand out food and water in Kryvyi Rih or Kharkiv. My entire life I've been a gun enthusiast, outdoorsman, off-road enthusiast, hiker, camper, hunter. I had the skill set to come help, and I decided to use it. To me, I felt that if I didn't get involved, I didn't do something, then I was complicit in the problem.
Ви до війни в Україні жили в Техасі. Чим ви займалися і чи маєте ви військовий досвід, чи ви навчалися військовій справі? Ви прибули в Україну як військовий чи як цивільний?
So I served in the United States Navy for 3 years. I didn't like it. I was an electronics technician specializing in radio repair. That has been an absolutely relevant skill in Ukraine. I would say that my more relevant skills come from my private life, recreation. I came here to fight from the beginning. Like I said, I didn't come here to be a civilian volunteer. I came here to fight. My last job, when I lived in Texas, I was actually working as a maintenance guy at an apartment complex. And this was well after I'd made the decision to go to Ukraine, and I had quit my primary job. I'd moved back home with my sister, and that was just what I was doing to make money to come the first time. My primary trade prior to the war, I worked as a ranch hand, cowboy. And then when the war started, I called my bosses. I worked at more than one ranch, and told them, look, I'm going to be away for a while. I'm going to wrap up this week, and then I'm out. It took me a while to get over to come to Ukraine, as most Americans do not have an international passport. Most of us can't afford to travel. So I applied for my passport, which took just an unreasonable amount of time. It took much too long. My passport arrived mid-July, and I bought a plane ticket for mid-August. I would have left that day, except couldn't afford a plane ticket that early. So, like I said, I didn't come here to hand out bottled water. I do that. Whenever I'm at the front, I always have bottled water in the car. If I can get them, MREs, food, that sort of thing. And, but I'm here primarily to participate in combat operations against the Russian Federation military. I will tell you, I love my job. I absolutely love this job. Something I stress to my students. I'm currently working as an instructor while I'm waiting to go back to the International Legion. I stress to them two things. You have to love your work. You have to wake up every morning so happy that you're in this fight, that you're in the Army here. And I do. Every day I wake up and I am thankful to God that this is what I'm doing with my life. The other thing is that you have to be afraid. If you're not afraid, if you're some psychopath, you're in the wrong place, because you're going to make bad decisions. You might be okay dying. Your friends probably aren't. And if something happens to you because you wanted to be dumb, you wanted to be John Wayne, then other people are going to pay for it.
Моє запитання. У вас шеврон на правій руці Інтернаціонального легіону. Як ви потрапили в легіон? Чи проходили навчання? Чи одразу вступили до лав легіону і почали боротися за незалежність нашої держави?
So when I initially came to Ukraine, this was in the earlier days of the war, because I got here in August of 22. In those days, it was still very much the Wild West. You went to a unit if you knew someone there. A lot of Americans and Brits, other foreigners that volunteered, well, they had a friend from Ukraine, and he was in the army, and he said, well, you can come work with me. Well, I had a friend, another American, who was in a Ukrainian military unit, and he said, well, come sign contract with us. Now, again, not the beginning, but this is earlier on, things are chaotic. It was hard getting paperwork done to get my contract. When that was finally handled, I deployed with them, and hey, we're disbanding our international company. We're sending all those guys elsewhere. So we would recommend you go back to Lviv and join the International Legion. So I left the front, I went back to Lviv, hung around for a few weeks until I figured out what I wanted to do. I made friends with a guy that said, yeah, you go to this secret place and give them your passport. They're going to take a picture of it, and you're going to start training that day. Our training cycle was initially supposed to be 3 weeks. I don't fully know what happened. We had a bunch of guys get sick, and then I think they might have been waiting to build up, waiting on like more people to come in for a full strength replacement company. So they, I ended up being in the rear for almost 2 months training, to the point that I sort of just decided, you know, everyone else can go play in the dirt. I've been doing this for months now. I'm gonna, and I would basically just find things to occupy my time. I will say, if you're new, if you've never been in the military, if you're new to Ukraine at all, you need to go through the training. Nothing can fully prepare you for the front. But, you know, as we say in Texas, you show up with your guns loaded. Don't go out there with no, you know, real experience, without having interacted with the Ukrainian military, without knowing a little bit of the language, without getting a feel for the climate. You may have guessed this environment is a little different than Texas. I live in the desert. This is cold. This is a warm day in Ukraine. To me, this is freezing. And I spent last winter on the front. You know, it was miserable. So you will go through training in the International Legion. It'll be the same training pretty much that the Ukrainian Army gets. I will say that whether or not you're a military veteran, whether or not you've seen combat prior to coming here, that won't always necessarily matter. I've seen guys that did 3 tours in Afghanistan completely shut down under fire. They completely stop working, and their mind just shuts off. I've seen guys that were F-16 mechanics in the Air Force that were just ice cold, that were switched on, doing their job, doing what they had to do. And, you know, I served with plenty of guys that had never been in the military before at all, and they were totally okay. They were totally fine. And again, if you come here expecting this to be like the United States military, if you come here expecting the level of support you got in the United States military, you're setting yourself up for failure. It's just a fact. It's just the facts of the matter. I would remind all of my compatriots, my fellow Americans, Ukraine is a little bit smaller than Texas. The GDP is not the highest. We're not quite to the point that I can pick up a radio and guarantee there will be an F-16 on the other end to come save me.
Щодо вашої підготовки вже на теренах нашої держави, скажіть, будь ласка, хто проводив навчання? Чи це були українські інструктори, чи інструктори, які приїхали до України з-за кордону?
So when I did training, we actually provided our own instructors. The command team, so Ukrainian officers, they would basically choose from their applicants who had experience on the front here, who had good leadership qualities, who was used to teaching people. And for the most part, it worked out. I've thought about going back as an instructor for the Legion. The reason I'm an instructor here in Lutsk, teaching civilians, for one, I happen to live here. For two, who needs the instructing more? Most of the guys in the Legion are coming from a country where weapons ownership is common. They're already used to using weapons. Most of them are military veterans. So it's more of a refresher course. And again, I can't stress it enough, you should go through the training if you have the opportunity. But who really needs it the most? Probably the people from Ukraine, civilians, never been in the military, maybe never held a gun before. Well, most of what I've ever done is hold a gun. My civilian job now, I'm an armed security guard. You know, I think the civilians here need the instructing more. The Legion uses its own instructors primarily because of the language barrier. If it were up to me, we would go and get experienced team leaders that, if we could afford to spare them, and maybe in the future, but you would have Ukrainians teaching these guys. The issue I take with having foreign instructors is that if you are an NRA certified instructor from the United States, and I'm not NRA certified, but if you were, you could probably teach someone to effectively handle and fire weapons. There's a lot more to it than that. In fact, you probably do that very rarely. I would say the likelihood of firing a weapon in combat in Ukraine at all is low. This is an artillery war. What I try to do is teach people to survive artillery, mortars, tanks, drones, aircraft. At the end of the day, I always tell the students, and some of the other instructors don't like this, because it's like I'm throwing away everything they just taught. And I stress to remember that as well, but I tell them, if you remember anything at all, move fast. Whatever you do, wherever you go, do it quick, and don't get lost. I tell them, if you're slow, you're giving the enemy an ample window of opportunity to zero you, to start dropping fire on you, and he will. And if you get lost, I guarantee you, you will die. And more than likely, so will your friends, because they're going to have to come look for you. Had a friend from Wisconsin, his name was Andrew. He was from my training group. He was in the training group behind me. He ended up in my platoon. I want to say he was our first casualty. And the reason he died is because he got lost. Not really his fault. Not really anyone's fault. It's dark. There's no light. There's no power. You can't use your light. Even through night vision, you can't see. Smoke everywhere. You're in a, there's no landmarks. The houses are all destroyed. There's no street names. Most villages in Ukraine don't have a sign saying this street is this. And he got turned around, got lost, and he died. I was the QRF driver when he died that drove the team out there to rescue the other guys that ended up caught in the same barrage. And a week later, when they found him, I was on the team that recovered his body. I never like telling war stories to scare people. Some instructors use that method. Oh, if I tell them something like a scary story that happened to me, it'll stick in their minds and they'll remember it. I don't do it to scare them. I do this so that they understand this is real. And in a way, by interacting with me, they're kind of touching it. They're kind of able to make it tangible, what they could potentially be getting into. As well, understand why we do the things we do. I always stress to these guys, weapon safety. I've seen people have negligent discharges where you accidentally, I don't like the word accident, you negligently fire the weapon in combat, on the front. What you've now done is possibly shot yourself or one of your coworkers. You've definitely given your position away. And you've wasted one round of ammunition. Constantly, these guys are new to handling weapons. This is today might be the third or fourth time some of them have ever held a real gun. So I go over and I tell them, keep your finger straight and off the trigger, or I'm going to bite it. I will bite you on the finger. And a few of them today did it. I didn't really bite them, but I grabbed their hand. I made a show of it, like I'm going to bite them. And they don't do it anymore. And so I don't want to scare people. I don't want them to think, oh my God, this is so terrible, the situation I'm going to. And if I'm being mobilized, I can't get out of it. Then you're just going to be panicked and no good to anyone. If I give them confidence, because it's scary enough, you'll be afraid. You'll be scared. And if you're not scared, you're stupid or you're crazy. then they've got a lot better shot of surviving. Most of what we do here is just build confidence so that maybe in a few months or a year when they're on the front, they're saying, okay, I was trained how to do this. I know what I'm doing. But if it were up to me, the Legion would be using Ukrainian instructors. The issue is guys that would really fit that role, well, they're busy fighting. Then you have to go get people that are fluent in English. I mean, like the best English speakers they have. And they also have to be able to understand different accents and dialects. It's interesting to me that the International Legion in Ukraine, their required language is English under most circumstances. There are some Spanish units, and they only require Spanish. But the main body of the International Legion requires you speak English, not Ukrainian. Well, in France, if you went to the French Foreign Legion, you would have to learn French. It's convenient for me. I do advise people that are coming here, learn Ukrainian, at least a little bit. Один светле пиво, будь ласка. Ти так красива, як тебе звати? You know, just a little bit. Contact, Tom, you know, sprava, levo, forget how to say rear. New diesel, benzene. People like putting, they like putting benzene in my diesel generator. And anyway, so, sorry. Go.
А цікаво, ви на війні фактично з осені 2022 року. Відповідно, ви спілкуєтеся із українськими військовими. І як, на вашу думку, от в чому різниця між українцями, українськими військовими і тими людьми, які приїжджають до нас, от як ви, з-за кордону і борються за нашу незалежність? Також, от як ви оцінюєте взагалі підготовку українських військових і підготовку от іноземців, які приїжджають до нас? Чи є різниця між, в тому числі, як сказати, не екіпіруванням, а забезпеченням? Ага. Чи є різниця, наприклад, між забезпеченням українських військових і між забезпеченням іноземців, які воюють в Україні?
So, the comparison between foreign volunteers and indigenous Ukrainian soldiers. The primary difference is that I want to be here and they have to. On the other hand, I can go home and they can't. They are home. They can't leave. I will say that the International Legion does not lose. I'm not aware of a single small arms engagement that the Legion has been in wherein they lost. These guys absolutely wipe the floor with the Russians every time they get into a shootout, which again isn't often. Artillery doesn't care how well trained you are. They don't care if you've got a brand new Daniel Defense DDM4 or if you have an AK that's a relic from the Soviets in Afghanistan. They don't care how much time it doesn't matter how much time you spend on the range, how much time you spend in the gym. Artillery doesn't care about that. It doesn't care if you're American, Ukrainian, French, Colombian, Mexican, doesn't matter. As far as the level of preparedness, how would I rate the average Ukrainian soldier? The average Ukrainian infantryman is amazing. They are absolutely outstanding. They're tough, physically fit. You are much more fit than the average American. I'm not a very fit person either. And the Ukrainians, I mean, there's a huge culture of physical fitness here. They pick skills up quickly, and I think part of it is that firearms are a novelty here, in a way. In America, everyone thinks he's the Lone Ranger because he owns a gun, right? But how often does he actually go practice? The Ukrainians I worked with, come on man, we're going to the range. We're going to go shoot. We're going to go practice every day, nonstop, you know? Whereas there were a lot of Americans, Canadians, places where it's easier to own a firearm. Firearms are more common. That just sort of, oh, I already know how. You know, I already know how to shoot. I'm not going to go train. I will say a lot of our co-workers, and I have to be careful here, are still sort of stuck in a Soviet mentality, which works if it's 1989 and we're in the Fulda Gap, sort of. I mean, you know, in that circumstance, you'd be up against NATO, but if you had the backing of the entire USSR behind you, Soviet mentality works great. We don't. And when you look at countries like Estonia, Finland, maybe even France or Germany, yeah, they're part of NATO, but they train to fight on their own. Ukraine is comparable in size, okay, to Texas. It's the biggest country in Europe. We have to fight as if resources are finite. It's possible. We could run out of bullets. We could run out of bodies. And when we start throwing those things at the problem, we will run out. There are not enough foreign volunteers. And what I mean is that people like me, there aren't enough of us to replace you. You're the average Ukrainian soldier. You need to be thinking about the bigger picture. If I prolong my life, that's less time spent training my replacement, getting him ready. And never mind that a new guy is a lot more likely to die than someone that's experienced. So we have to play this smart. This isn't the Second World War. This isn't Korea. This isn't Vietnam. It's comparable, I'd say, to the First World War in Vietnam specifically in a lot of ways. But, and again, to my NATO guys, we're not in Afghanistan. When Andrew went missing, we didn't know that he was dead for a day or two. After a while, and that amount of cold, that amount of fire, we knew. You know, I mean, we hadn't confirmed it. We didn't confirm it till we found his body, but you just know. I mean, at that point, he's either frozen to death, starved, or he's been wounded and bled out. And had that happened in Afghanistan, you had one guy go missing. The entire theater, every air asset, every major unit in the entire ISAF would be coordinating to go find one person. That's not possible here. One guy gets wounded, and we send F-16s and 3 Black Hawk helicopters to go get him. One guy gets wounded in Ukraine, and you hope you have enough people that aren't wounded to carry him out, get him to the pickup, and hope the pickup doesn't get hit with an ATGM on the way to the hospital, which is actually why mine looks the way it does, because the roads, and you got to go fast. But the average Ukrainian, if you were to take him out of Ukraine and teach him English and put him in the U.S. military, he would be a rock star. He would be a super soldier. I mean, that guy would probably be, you know, this guy that a few months ago, you know, he spent 3 months on the front, and before that, he worked at a coffee shop in Lviv. They would be trying to send that guy to like an ODA, which is Special Forces, or Ranger School. That guy would be a rock star. He'd have his picture on the wall in the Pentagon. And that's the average Ukrainian. The average foreigner, it depends. I met good and bad people in the Legion. The best men I've ever known. I've met some of the worst. If you come here, come for the right reasons. You know, I'm not here to kill people because it's fun. Is my job fun? Yeah, sometimes. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to help the best way I can. There are people that come here for easy access to narcotics. I have no interest in working with that kind of thing. I have a policy: if I catch you abusing, for instance, issued medication, you know, morphine, ketamine, stuff that's in your IFAC, I will do everything in my power to get you kicked out. You know, I honestly have more respect. A lot of the guys from South America and from other places where, you know, the income is low, you know, less privileged countries will say, those guys are just here to build a better life for their families. Because the average salary for a Ukrainian soldier is worlds above what they're making in, you know, whatever third world country they're from. I have more respect for those guys than anything. I'm an idealist, you know. I'm maybe a little bit crazy, but I'm here to do what I think is right. Those guys are here so their children can grow up and have a better future. It's the same as the Ukrainians want. It breaks my heart when I walk by an elementary school in Ukraine and it's abandoned because it's not safe to send kids there because they like sending cruise missiles to elementary schools. You know, I talked to a woman last year who, oh yeah, my kids are doing online school, they're doing Zoom school because it's not safe to send them to class. And this was in Lviv. This wasn't even at, you know, this wasn't even at the front. And as far as, you know, the good and bad, when you're on the line, it doesn't matter. You know, everyone loves talking about, oh, the typical Moscow talking points. Oh, Ukraine's got a Nazi problem. I haven't seen that. But I'll tell you this. I was friends with a guy who had been in prison most of his adult life and found his way here and ended up in the Legion. big swastika on his neck. One of the best guys. I was so glad to have him there because I knew he was going to look out for me and I was going to do the same for him. And we're both alive right now. I don't care if you're the most hardline left wing. I don't care if you're Pol Pot. I don't care if you're Mussolini. When you get out on the line and the first time you hear that gun go off, because you'll hear the cannon before you hear the shell. Boom. The first time you hear that, every personal conviction, every I don't like that guy, he stole my I don't know, my socks, I don't care. You're just glad, like you hope when the sun comes up the next day, if there were 6 of you on that mission, you hope there's still 6 in the morning. I am too afraid to worry about personal drama. And every day here, I'm right now, no. I mean, yeah, okay, it's risky. You still get cruise missiles, drones, whatever. At the front every single day. I'm not paralyzed by fear, but I'm very much motivated by it. This place is terrifying. This war is terrifying. And there are days that I wish I could get into a stand-up small arms gunfight. The first time you hear grads go off, like a grad battery, which is a rocket artillery, you know, or that, which meant that one was meant for you. Like, we were on position one night, and I'm guessing it was vehicle mounted. I don't know for sure what. I think probably a BTR, like probably a BTR 80, just because I know that's what was operating in that area at the time. The terrain between us and the enemy position, there was a low hill, so we couldn't get a direct, line of sight on them. We couldn't engage them with a rifle, but a vehicle high up enough, the gun on it could engage us. Standing on the position, and round from the PKT, the machine gun come in, past, I mean, it had to be within, I don't know, a few centimeters of my face, and I just saw the tracers. Now on a tracer belt on that PK, 1 and 4 is a tracer, which meant if I saw 3 rounds, there were 12. And had I been standing a foot to the right, a foot to the left, I'd have been dead. I don't know why he didn't graze us. He didn't try to suppress us anymore. I mean, the guy was on, All he had to do was wait on me to turn around and talk to my friend, and he'd knock my head off. It's terrifying here. And with these new volunteers, I tell them, look, it's scary, and you need to get a good idea what you're getting into. I've seen 100 guys come and go. Some guys will come, they'll get psyched out before their first mission. They can't even do that. I don't blame them. Some guys do 1 mission. Nope, not for me. Thanks anyway. Okay. I don't know a man here, or woman, we had women too, that went home for any reason that I hold it against. And for you to come and do this and keep doing it, you've got to be insane. You have to be absolutely insane. But again, this is the best job in the world, and I'm not saying that to be funny or sarcastic. I love what I do. I love the people I do it with. I wish that a lot of people could see what I see here in Ukraine and in the Legion, in the Army here. We'd have people, like in the beginning, we'd have more volunteers than we knew what to do with. For the guys that are scared to get mobilized, yeah, you should be scared, but it's just one of those things. It's like, I used to do volunteer work after the hurricanes on the Gulf Coast in like the Gulf of Mexico. They'd hit, Texas and Louisiana, Florida, and I'd go down and help out, hand out bottled water and chase the looters off. And, if I lived, and at one point I lived very near the Gulf of Mexico, I could get killed by a hurricane half the year, and I couldn't do anything about it. Tornadoes. I used to live in an area that had a lot of tornadoes. Well, you can't do anything about that either, any more than you can artillery, or any more than you can rain. You could die right now. But I didn't want to die knowing I could have done something to make things better, to do what was right, and I chose not to. So, if you're thinking about getting mobilized, think about what's riding on this. Look at the bigger picture. Don't think about yourself. Don't just think about yourself. Think about Bucha, like I did, Izium, Lyman, all these places where these horrible things have happened. And remember, that's going to happen again. if we don't win here. I gave a talk with the Ukrainian Society of San Antonio. We have a very large Ukrainian diaspora. And I told them, you know, freedom is not free. Everyone's heard the Toby Keith songs and, you know, freedom isn't free. No, but it's for rent. You have to pay the rent on it. We got to pay our rent right now. You want to be free? You got to pay for it.
Скажіть, будь ласка, Кольт, які би ви могли дати поради, самі головні поради для військових, які зараз перебувають в зоні бойових дій, на ваш погляд, що б ви могли таке найголовніше виділити?
If you're already there, then you already know my advice. Go fast, don't get lost, try not to look important. Someone has to carry the machine gun and the RPG. Don't volunteer to do it. Besides that, you know, if you have an M240, the American Kulemet, it weighs like 15 kilograms, so I can't recommend that. When you have rotation, don't spend the entire time partying. You know, you don't want to go back to the line with a hangover. Go see your lady friend, take a bath, and get some sleep. Get some decent food. Save your money. Don't blow your paycheck at Foxtrot. You know, I like games too. I like computers. Don't go drink your entire paycheck. If you need something, don't be afraid to ask. I will personally buy you socks. If you're, you know, hey, I've gone through all my good winter socks. Okay, get a hold of me. I will personally Nova Post to you some socks today. For new guys, you know, you're going to make friends that are going to last the rest of your life. Be hesitant with getting close to anyone. And it's because, you know, my best friend in the world, my very best friend in the world, is a guy from Britain. We'll call him G. I don't want to say his full name. And, you know, I love that man. I absolutely love that man. You know, he's like a family member to me. If something had happened to him, I would have been totally useless. I would have had to go home. So they wouldn't have just lost one guy, they would have lost two. If you're in a unit with a family member, transfer. Really. We got a guy, Ukrainian guy that we worked with, whose brother was basically just down the road from us. He was not far away, different unit, but they were in that area, and his brother passed away. And, you know, he took a few weeks, got some leave, never the same after that. And still did his job, still a great guy. But believe me, if you're in a unit with like a close friend, somebody you grew up with, a relative, one of you needs to transfer somewhere else, at least different platoons. It's a lot harder. Believe me, you're going to say, oh, I wish I'd been there. You'll be glad you weren't.
А от для перемоги, на ваш погляд, що нам потрібно для того, щоб якомога швидше завершити війну і перемогти?
We need air superiority. We need aircraft that can actually engage enemy artillery positions without getting shot down by enemy air defense. We need the ability to own the sky. I was never that worried about aircraft. We dealt with them pretty often, but, you know, knowing what I know, it's a guy in a MiG is probably not going to engage me directly with any degree of effectiveness. But the F-16 is designed from the ground up. It's a very old aircraft. You know, they were designed in the 70s. I mean, it's old. It's old technology. They're way more advanced than the Russian stuff, but what it's designed to do is win World War III. It's designed for the Cold War, wherein it would go and fight the Soviet army, destroy all of their artillery, which would free up ground forces to be able to move. The problem now is you can't move infantry and vehicles under artillery fire. And the purpose of air superiority is not just to keep enemy aircraft from attacking infantry and vehicles. It's not just to keep enemy aircraft from delivering supply. The purpose of air superiority is so that we are able to engage and destroy enemy logistics hubs and enemy artillery. Every single job in the military is to support, in the United States, and the same is true in Ukraine, two people. the 0311 Marine Corps infantryman, and the 11 Bravo, the U.S. Army infantryman. Every single thing, every single soldier in Ukraine is doing, he's either one of these guys, he's either an infantryman, or he's doing something to make his life easier. If you want to see us win, we need aircraft. We need air superiority. We need to make it impractical and virtually impossible for the Russian Federation to fly aircraft within Ukraine and around its borders.
I understand. And ще хочу вас запитати, от ви зараз знаходитеся в навчально-тренувальному центрі Тернове поле. Знаєте, що ми тренуємо і військових, і цивільних громадян. Зокрема, от ви долучаєтеся до тренувань цивільних, спостерігаєте, як у нас відбувається підготовка. І от які ваші враження щодо тренувань цивільних, наскільки це потрібна річ, на ваш погляд, на сьогоднішній день, і як знадобляться їм ці знання, які от вони здобувають у нашому центрі?
One of the most important rights to me is the right to bear arms. The Battle of Hostomel Airport was won in part by local civilian militia armed with hunting rifles and pump-action shotguns, who at that time were being commanded by a retired Army captain. The gentleman was a veteran of the Donbass War, and he, within a few minutes, managed to round up his local neighbors, his friends that all own guns, and those people absolutely butchered the VDV, which were an elite unit paratroopers in the Russian military. I tell these guys what they need to consider is not, am I going to be ready if I get mobilized? Well, you better be, because if you do, it's going to happen. What you should consider is, am I going to be ready to defend my home, like my house, my family, if they come again from Belarus, which is not that far away. And I tell them it's possible. Maybe not this year, maybe not in 5 years, but it is entirely possible they would have to act as civil defense here. And if you've never held a gun before, the first time you need a gun is a bad time to learn. So the civilians here, they want to learn. It's very interesting to me because everyone I know has been, pretty much doing this since they were old enough to walk. By the time I was 12, I was carrying a pistol. I got my first rifle, I might have been 8. And it's really fascinating to me to watch them learn something that is totally foreign to them. When you think 3 or 4 years ago, these people thought I'm never going to need a gun in my life. I live in Ukraine. This isn't Texas, So, well.
Скажіть, Кольт, по завершенню війни, як ви бачите себе, де ви плануєте жити, які ваші плани на майбутнє?
So, my time in combat here will come to an end this summer. I've already been wounded once. I'm getting old. I'm getting old. 28 in the Army is an old man. And after that, what I'd like to do, I want to stay in Ukraine half the time. I want to do winter in Texas and summer here. I don't ever want to see snow again. I don't really ever want to see a really hot day either. I've had my share of strife. So I'm initially going to be looking for work as an English teacher while I'm in Ukraine. And, я трохи розмовляю українською, so when I learn more, that'll be easier. Another idea that I play with, maybe, we'll see. I want to open a country western bar in Lviv. And, I'm semi-serious about this, somewhere for all of our foreign guests to kind of feel at home. I never get homesick in Ukraine. I am home. Why would I be homesick? But, somewhere with genuine country music, American beer, maybe sawdust on the floor, as well. I think it would be interesting for Western culture and Ukrainian culture to have like a neutral ground to mingle. I got introduced to Ukrainian culture in the middle of a war. I had borscht in the United States before. It wasn't very good. And then I had it in Ukraine and I absolutely loved it. But after that, I work in security. I'd like to keep doing that. Maybe in Ukraine, I don't know. but I'm not done here. I've been talking to some of our other instructors and some of our staff members about coming back as an instructor full time. My thinking here is, you know, okay, I'm one guy, but if I go teach a class of 10 people, now there are 10 of me. You give a man to fish and he eats for a day, teach a man to fish and he's gonna, you know, go kill Russians the rest of his life. So we'll see. I've got plans in the works. Ukraine is kind of a second home for me now. You know, I don't have much left at home. I mean, I like my job. I miss having a full-size Ford pickup and not my poor little Isuzu out there, but I miss having my own personal firearms too. But other than that, I mean, I am home, you know. I try not to be too dramatic, but I mean, you know, my blood is in the ground here. I've got friends that are buried in Kharkiv, you know, people that are not Ukrainian, and they're in the military cemetery in Kharkiv now. My rucksack is still somewhere in the front, on the front, somewhere, you know, in the old position we used to use before it got blown up. For the rest of time, there's going to be something in Ukraine with my name written on it. And so yeah, I mean, I was born in Texas and that's always going to be home, but this place is too, because I earned it. I mean, you know, I heard they were passing a bill where we could get dual citizenship, and I honestly can't wait. That was actually possible for a while. Under certain circumstances, foreign volunteers in the Ukrainian army could get citizenship, but you had to renounce yours. No thank you. I have a U.S. passport, and I am so proud of it. So when the pathway is finally open for dual citizenship, I'm going to pursue that. The other option is to marry a Ukrainian woman, which we're still working on. And, you know, so I have a lot of plans for after the war, and pretty much all of them involve Ukraine.
Дякую вам, Коль, за розмову, і дякуємо вам, що допомагаєте нам здобувати перемогу в боротьбі з ворожою Росією, яка напала на нас для того, щоб поневолити нас. Спасибі.
Будь ласка.